Hi, greetings and good morning. So this is gonna be a video about the Gorean topic. So yeah, I want to discuss something that really annoys me in the more mainstream Gorean community. That is slaves. Now before anybody goes, oh, free woman, she hates slaves, let me explain what I'm talking about first. What I'm talking about is the over-exaggeration of information about slavery within many aspects of the Gorean community. Like, for example, there's this Facebook group that I'm on, and I'm probably going to be annoyed because I'm probably going to post this video there. Anyway, think I've never seen an actual Gorean topic. Mostly it is a few aspects about Gorean slavery, and that can be useful for someone who is starting out as a kachira. And then there is just pictures and pictures and pictures and pictures of slaves. No, I shouldn't speak too much about it because I do comment on the pictures at times, and at times they're nice to look at. But really, the problem is this is the way it is all over the place, and it's not what the Gorean lifestyle is about. So yeah. And for example, one of the quote-unquote leaders of this group, he has named his homestone La Kachira. Let's just let that sink in for a moment. This man, who's claimed to be a Gorean free man, his homestone, the representation of his sovereignty of himself and his household, is called La Kachira, which literally means I am a slave girl. Yeah. Now, I know some Goreans have a problem with it, but I do not have a problem with the idea of basically practicing Gorean team BDSM. Basically, to have a DS relationship and then slap some Gorean terms and so on onto that. If that's your thing, what's the problem? I don't see a problem with that. I don't see that as living the Gorean lifestyle. And it's not following the Gorean philosophies. So, yeah. And I actually think it's quite silly when people like this, but I don't think he has, but people like him, the only thing they think about when they discuss the Gorean philosophy and the lifestyle is slaves, 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 and then they say, oh no, being Gorean, that's not being, that's have nothing to do with BDSM. No, being a Gorean has nothing to do with BDSM, but what you practice, that's straight up BDSM. Not that there's something wrong with it, but call it what it is. Now, within the Gorean lifestyle, slavery has a part. And among other things, it's because Goreans do not think freedom is an inviolable, I think that's the word, yes, inviolable human right. We think that freedom is something precious and valuable that you have to fight to be able to have. It's not something that is just tossed at you just for the deed of being born a human being. And as such, there are those that are not deserving of freedom and who are therefore slaves. It is also the belief of Goreans that the deepest expression of femininity is slavery. That men are naturally, and this is, like I said in other videos, in general terms, because you can't really paint everybody with the same brush, but in general terms, men are dominant and women are submissive. That's how we are made from nature. And as such, if femininity is submissive by nature, then the deepest expression of femininity would then be slavery. And as such, slavery has a part in Gorean lifestyle, but that doesn't mean it should have the overwhelming place it does in the most Gorean communities, both online and offline. Basically, it's like this. Many farmers own horses. And you can say that since horses are a farm animal, tending to horses is a part of being a farmer, but not all farmers have horses, not all farmers are very interested in horses. No, yes, some. For some people, their love of horses is so great that it's one of the main reasons why they have decided to become farmers. For others, they might not care much for horses, they don't keep them. Others have horses, but it's not a main part of being a farmer. But in either case, you cannot say that being a farmer, the quintessential part of being a farmer is someone who owns a horse. And as such, the quintessential part of being a Gorean is not someone who owns a slave. The master-slave dynamic between a man and a woman is not at the heart of the Gorean philosophy. The Gorean philosophy is built up of the way of life of several different ancient cultures, like the Romans, the Greek, the Old Norse, and several others, in addition to Jon Norman's own theories and ideas, and it's all been blended together and presented a very unique philosophy. And it's a little bit Nietzsche, a little bit of a protest against how our society flows more and more towards mediocrity. It's many things, and slavery has a place in it, but when that's your main focus, it's not Gorean. Being Gorean is about being true to yourself. It's about having honor. It's about striving against mediocrity. It's about taking the philosophies that is found in the Gore books and interpreting them into something that is usable for our modern society. And it sort of pisses me off when I constantly see slaves, 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 slaves. Look at this picture, how pretty this slave is. Slaves are pretty, I like slaves. Look, slave dances, slaves, slaves, slaves. I call my homestone La Cachira. Because then you really, really have not gotten it. Now, I learned about the Gorean lifestyle within a community that were not very slave-centric. So therefore, I was sometimes confused when people came in there and asked, why would somebody want to be a free woman? They don't seem to have a place within the Gorean lifestyle. But I'm starting to get why people might ask that now, because for a lot of people, they focus solely on the master-slave dynamic, and then of course there's no room for anything else. But that is not accepting the lifestyle into yourself. It is. Let me try to use an example from my religious life. I'm a Wiccanish pagan, and many people come to Wicca just for the spells and the magic. The problem is that if that's all you're seeking to get from it, why are you then seeking out a religion? Wicca is so much more. It's a philosophy. It's a system of religious worship. It is a belief, and it's so much more than spells and magic. Spells and magic is in there, but you can perfectly well be a Wiccan and not practice magic. And it is the same, and that's not to say that it's wrong not to be a religious practitioner. I mean, there's a lot of people who are witches who don't follow the religion of it, but if you're gonna claim to be Wiccan, then be Wiccan. And it's the same with the Gorean lifestyle. If the only reason why you are interested in gore is because you're interested in the master-slave dynamic, there are so many lifestyles for you. You have old guard, you have Victorian household, there's so many of them where you can practice a master-slave dynamic, and you can even have a master-slave dynamic with a Gorean paint on it, if that's what you want. But why are you calling yourself a Gorean lifestyler when the only thing you're focusing on is slaves? And also, to paint it in a broader picture, the main focus of the Gorean lifestyle is freedom. It is the value of freedom. It is being free. It's taking responsibility for your action. It is having honor, which you need to be free to do, because unless you are free, you cannot be depended upon. And honor really is a way to be, is about being dependable. When you look at all ancient descriptions of honor, really what it boils down to is being dependable. It is a person who keeps his or her word, who will be there when he or she has said she will be there. Basically, there's usually a lot of flowering speeches about it, but what it boils down to is being dependable, and unless you are free, people cannot depend on you. And basically, the Gorean lifestyle is about that freedom. It's about the freedom to seek the sovereignty of yourself, of being all that you can be. Now, this is very simply explained, but basically that is at the heart of it. And how is it then that a lifestyle and a philosophy places so much value on freedom is then, for many people, boiled down to, I want to own a slave. I mean, you cannot have a lifestyle about freedom if all you think about is slaves. Now, I have nothing against slaves. I would not mind if my free companion took a slave. She could help me around the house, could have a friend in her. I wouldn't mind it. But I have a problem with when everything is about slavery. Basically, when you look at the core books, even if there's a lot of slavery in those books, and there were one of my friends in the Gorean community said that it's basically paranormal romance in many ways, in that a lot of the books accumulate with one slave finding her perfect master and so on. But if you look at the heart of it, the free men and a few free women who are sensible in the books, what they are about is their own freedom. Now then, some of them, quite a few of them, chooses to then have slaves, and these slaves become an important part of their lives. But it's not about slavery. It's not about keeping slaves. It's about them and their sovereignty of themselves. And therefore, I guess the point of this rant is, try to examine why are you a Gorean. Because if you are Gorean just because you like the master-slave aspect, then you might want to find another lifestyle, because this lifestyle might not be the best one for you. And if you are about something deeper, about following the philosophy, about finding your own sovereignty and developing yourself to the best of your ability, being true to yourself, and perhaps you might want to, when you discuss both offline and online, perhaps you might consider discussing something else than slaves. Because for when that's the image our lifestyles show outward. All people see when they search Gorean is a slave. I mean, I haven't been on the Wikipedia article about the Gorean lifestyle for a while, but last time I were there, it was illustrated by a slave girl kneeling by a table. Is that how we as free Goreans want to be represented? Is that how we want people to see us? It's the lifestyle about the slaves. Because I sure as hell know that being a Gorean, for me, is not about slaves. Like I said, I don't mind slaves. I would love to have one. But it's my development, my sovereignty, and my honor is so extremely much more important than slaves. So yeah, do we want the Gorean lifestyle to be seen as and be nothing more than a BDSM, a branch of BDSM? No, I'm not dissing BDSM here, I'm into BDSM, but do we want it to be a philosophy and a lifestyle, based around a philosophy about honor, integrity, being true to yourself, and finding your own sovereignty, about fighting against mediocrity? Do we want it to be a lifestyle about the core aspects of what is presented in the Gore books, or do we want it to be basically DS and slaves? I think we should put, pun intended, the slaves in the proper place. They are a part of the lifestyle, they're a part of the philosophy, but they should not be allowed to dominate the philosophy completely, because there is so many things within the Gorean philosophy which are a lot more important than slavery. And that is what I wanted to say. I hope you all will be having great days. Blessed be.